Welcome, folks. As we wait for people to come on in, we're asking folks who feel interested, so inclined, to share where they are calling in from. So we have quite the global audience tonight already. For those of you who are just signing in, we have folks from Sheffield, Massachusetts, and we have people from Manhattan and Brooklyn and Australia and Singapore and California, Santa Monica, and Hawaii, Virginia, more New York, New Jersey folks. Welcome, Rockland County. I'm loving this. More New York City. Not so exotic. It's all good. It's all good. We're gonna give it a couple more minutes, I think. And yeah, like we have 250 people RSVP'd. So watching those number counts, we're just gonna give it a couple more minutes. Jersey City, Raleigh, welcome. Philly, I love it. Mississippi, wow. Brooklyn representing. I'm in Brooklyn also. I didn't put in the chat. Maryland. Great. Well, we have a tight agenda tonight. So I think, and should we get started? What do you think? Give it a, yes. Let's get, she's telling me 1 minute. Give it another minute. Lower East Side. Welcome to folks who might be watching us on Facebook. If you live on Facebook, sometimes feel free to share this on Facebook to let other people know it's happening. Or Instagram or Twitter or wherever I'm missing. For folks just joining us, if you want to put in where you're from, we're happy to have you do that, and no pressure if you'd rather not. Las Vegas, wow. Philadelphia. If folks missed it before, we have people from Australia and Singapore and Hawaii, Houston, California, Palm Beach. Wow, love it. Bed-Stuy. All right, should we get started, Anne? Okay, welcome everybody. I have the best job of the night, I think. It's to introduce this amazing group that's here and to let you all know that you're in for a treat. My name is Lonnie Santo. I'm the CEO of Footsteps. I have the pleasure of introducing Ann Kirshner this evening, who will be moderating this conversation. Ann is co-chair of the Footsteps board. She's a university professor at the City University of New York, a strategic advisor in technology and education, and the author of Salah's Gift. And she is an incredible thought partner and advisor to me in my work. So Ann, I wanna pass this over to you and let the audience know that we're gonna turn off the chat function. And so if you have Q&A throughout, you could put it into Q&A and Anne will do her best to get there by the end of the conversation at around 6:40, 6:45-ish. I think that's all the housekeeping. And Anne, I pass the baton to you to welcome the rest of the crowd tonight. Thanks all for joining.
I take the baton from you. Thank you. Thank you, Lonnie. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who's joining us, and welcome to Report from the Field, Footsteppers, Facing New Realities. We're going to be talking about the last year or so tonight. what a roller coaster we've all been on. I live here on the Upper West Side of Manhattan on 96th Street, which is the approach to Mount Sinai. And I spent last year and a half hearing sirens going by. And then the vaccines arrive, yay! And then the Delta variant arrives, boo! And so this emotional roller coaster has been hard, but hard in sort of an uneven way. You know, for some people, the ability to work from home gave them a new flexibility that was really wonderful. And, you know, maybe the biggest problem they had was what television series they were going to stream. While for others, it's no exaggeration to say that the era of COVID was one of torture. And if we fast forward to today, we see a similar split. That is, some people have never missed a beat as far as their work was concerned, and maybe they're balancing now working from home and going back to their office. And maybe they've begun to, as many of us have, resume some semblance of activities outside the home. But it's fair to say that for the community served by Footsteps, and that is the community of people who have chosen to leave their ultra-Orthodox community, the time of COVID has been one of extraordinary challenges. So we're here tonight to talk about what some of those extra challenges have been. And we couldn't have a better duet of panelists tonight than Pesach Eisen and Naomi Moskowitz. So let me just introduce them now and thank them for the extraordinary work that they do. Naomi is Footsteps Director of Economic Empowerment, where she oversees the organization's educational and career development program, as well as our crisis funding. Naomi herself has been a Footsteps member since 2012, and she's studying for a Master's of Public Administration at the City College of New York. Pesach Eisen is also a member turned staff at Footsteps, and he serves as case manager on the organization's clinical team. He's a psychotherapist, a researcher, and a writer, and his special focus is on mental health and religious disaffiliation. Pesach holds a master's degree in mental health counseling from Brooklyn College. So thanks so much for joining us tonight. And let's get started by sort of rolling back to where we started, those awful early days of COVID, which we might call pandemic phase 1. And Naomi, let me start with you. And tell us a little bit about what that early time was like for our members and how their lives were transformed.
Sure. Thank you, Anne. Right at the beginning when things, people went into lockdown and many of our members were unable to work, I think our first goal was helping our members sign up for unemployment benefits. And so our career services sort of pivoted from helping people finding jobs to help people figuring out how to navigate the unemployment system, which was a little bit of a mess. And also many of our members were not eligible for unemployment for various reasons. And so we recognized that we needed a pivot from our regular programming and figure out a way to serve the needs that were emerging of the community. And so we moved everything online, and we started offering some workshops on how to manage, how to budget in the middle of a crisis. We opened up a crisis fund to help those that were most vulnerable and figuring out how to pay for rent without a job. We were fielding requests, helping people connect to food banks. Our volunteers were helping move some of our students to help study online. So there was just, depending on where our members sat and in terms of whatever they were up to. So if they were living in, we had some members who were staying in a dorm and then had to go home, but they had no home to go to. So we had members who were moving into shelters, members who were looking to help connect into housing for couch surfing. It really was a mess. From an educational perspective, it was also kind of a unique time for some people where the online learning gave some of our students more of an opportunity to attend school and work part-time without a commute. So some people thrived in those early days of staying home without having to worry about childcare or figure out how to leave their house. And for some, it really just became impossible to continue school. So we had members who were dropping out of school. They felt that they couldn't continue their studies in a virtual reality. They didn't really have a private space to be able to focus on their schoolwork. And it really just, depending on their circumstances, kind of hit people really unevenly.
So it sounds like the services that Footsteps provides for economic empowerment, i.e. looking for jobs, and in this case, unemployment insurance, for housing, for emergency funding, for education, all of that sort of pivoted fairly quickly. I mean, did a lot of people lose their jobs? And why would someone have been unable to apply for unemployment insurance?
Sure. I mean, it really just depends, right? So some of our members had just started new jobs. Maybe they weren't working long enough. They might have been working for somebody within the religious community where they weren't being paid on the books. They may have had some gig work. So before the pandemic, unemployment insurance was, enhanced and became more available for different types of situations. A lot of our members just didn't qualify, and we're really struggling to figure out how to pay for their basic necessities to live. Another thing that became apparent right at the beginning was the digital divide. It used to be that if our member had a laptop or didn't have a laptop, it wasn't necessarily integral for them to be able to find a job or go to school. But once the pandemic hit, we couldn't even offer services to members without Wi-Fi or laptops. So we reached out and we created a tech program as well to help at least create an equal starting point to be able to offer help for members, even in terms of looking for remote work, if they had to pivot to remote work, or so that they could continue their schooling online. And also to be able to access our support groups so that they didn't have to feel so isolated.
And how savvy are they about navigating, the world of whether it's unemployment or going online? I mean, do they have the education and the background to be able to navigate all of that?
Not really. We actually offered for some people, yes, and for some people, no. Along with offering laptops, where we were offering volunteers to help work one-on-one with members to figure out how to set them up, connect to Wi-Fi. It's a little counterintuitive because if you give somebody a laptop and a hotspot, but they don't know how to connect it to Wi-Fi, it's not really so helpful. And so we offered some, with a lot of extra precautions in place, the ability to meet some of our members in person and give them the laptop, teach them how to set it up, teach them how to connect to the Wi-Fi, and then from there offered more advanced tech learning through advanced digital literacy. So we created a cohort of people who are looking to advance their computer skills depending on their levels of expertise on the computer, navigating Word, Excel, even just like Gmail and Google Drive, things that they would need to communicate or gain support or look for work or attend school. Really just depends on what the members' needs were.
So kind of a crash course in 21st century life, and having to do all that under the pressure of potential illness, their own family members. I mean, I can only imagine. So far we've been talking about the logistics of what members went through. We haven't even touched yet on what their psychological life was. And so let me turn to you, Pesach, to give us more insight into what members were feeling and going through during this time.
Thank you for having me. The stuff that I'm sharing is sort of very broad. Obviously, everybody had their own unique struggle and their own experience with this and everything else. There's an old saying that goes something like this. There's only one thing that is certain in life, and that is uncertainty. And taxes and death, I'm not sure. But this so-called fact of life, uncertainty and the intrinsic chaos of life is maybe one of the reasons why people lean so heavily on religion. One of the many reasons. Provides a degree of order to the messiness and uncertainty that's inherent in life and existence. And in no small part, the communities where we come from function as a stability anchor in the chaos of life. And now, in a sense, choosing to shift away from that existential security blanket is in effect choosing to walk into the vast unknown and uncertainty of life, of existence, of reality. And I know these words are thrown around a lot, but I'll say them anyway. I think it's unbelievably brave and courageous when framed that way. And, one may argue that transition and uncertainty are synonymous. They go hand in hand. It's the uprooting of everything one knows and walking into the possibilities and the potentialities of the unknown. But the thing is that there's only so much uncertainty that we humans are able to tolerate. Before the pandemic, the sort of unknown that one walked into always had some sort of known. You're walking into some degree of order and predictability, things you expect, things you've read about, things you may have heard from others, organizations, systems, and structures that are supposedly in place to help you cushion this uncertainty blow that you're walking into. But once the pandemic hit, that tiny fraction of known, of certainty, shifted and largely evaporated. And now walking into the unknown and doing whatever brings people to Footsteps became way scarier, even intolerable. Because this small degree of order was now disordered. And it's also because the people, organization, and systems, Footsteps, one of them, the people supposed to be in the know of what's about to go down, no longer knew anything at all. This script of what's about to happen was unscripted. We were trying to figure it out ourselves. Everything changed. And everyone had to sort of begrudgingly recalibrate their expectations and sit at times in the thick of this unbearable uncertainty. And it should have made this tremendous journey way, way harder.
You've left me with a mental image of what lockdown could have been like when your home was not your home, when your job was not your job, your school was not your school, and your community was not your community. It's quite horrifying to think about all of that dislocation all at one time. Many Footsteps members have families, and sometimes their relationship with their children becomes a complicated one because of custody battles and battles within the religious community. Can you speak a little bit to what the situation was like for mothers and fathers who had that yet another dimension of complexity in their lives, not only their own care, but the care of their children?
Yeah. It's just every layer that we add, just introduces, the journey becomes more complicated. If you're a single person, you sort of have a bit more leeway and freedom to experiment with the situation. If you're a parent, it's more difficult, even in normal times. And you can imagine how everything that I mentioned earlier and much, much more was not part of the equation. So what I mentioned before was, I guess, single people experience, but add onto that parents and family. I don't have any personal experience with that, but it was, however hard things were before, for each individual person became immensely harder. And that little energy left over to start building your life and starting to create why you left all had to go to sort of managing and surviving. Yeah.
And if I can add,
Please.
Sure. I know from where I sit in the organization, it really depends. Some of our members who have custody of their children, their needs increased tremendously, right? So now I have to figure out how to be my children's teacher. And I also still have to work from home. And I have to figure out how to like take care of all of those things at the same time, assuming they were lucky enough to have a job where they could work from home. And so for us, our requests for volunteers really increased. We were able to provide tutors for children who were studying from home. And for some, it was actually a really welcome opportunity to be able to add some sort of education for their students, for their children that they might not have had otherwise access to. So if somebody was only enrolled in a religious school and only had access to religious education, at this point, it kind of opened the doors for maybe some students to take, like, learn how to code or just learn something new, a science class that they didn't have access to before. And for others, it really became worse. The courts were closed for a while. And so if somebody did not have custody of their children and they only had visitation, perhaps they lost access to seeing their children. It became a little bit of a free-for-all in terms of what people were doing without clear custody agreements in place. And if somebody was in the middle of trying to figure one out, that became impossible to do. So it just became a little bit of a free-for-all. And if, depending on the X that our member is fighting with and what that fight is looking like and how far somebody's willing to go, some people lost contact with their children.
Wow. We have, I'm sure, members who are with us tonight. We have who have made the services that we provide to our members possible with us tonight. And I thank them all for their participation. And I do hope you'll put some Q&A in the chat for us. But I want to pivot now to a little bit more of the here and now. Let's call it pandemic phase 2. I will not allow myself to say post-pandemic because it really is not. It really is not post-pandemic. But tell us a little bit about if we look at the situation now, how have things changed? Where have they improved? Where are we in the same stew? Naomi, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Is it okay if I jump back to something that you didn't ask about, though?
Of course.
I want to offer like a little, I guess, a little bit of nuance to kind of the middle piece where people were in lockdown for a long time. It was really stressful, and it was really debilitating, and people were just losing hope for somebody who had been, maybe planning methodically and carefully how to leave the community, and then they were getting ready to do it, and then lockdown happened, and then they got stuck in an already stuck situation. Really just was kind of set people back a lot. And for somebody who just managed to gain the courage to leave and figured it out and got their first apartment, paid their first month rent, had their job lined up, then lost their job and had no safety net to fall back on, it really was detrimental in a huge way. And then months and months passed like that, where we could only attempt to be a Band-Aid without really knowing what was coming next. And for a while, it looked like things were easing up, and the spring hit, and people got excited. And I remember sort of a desperation where people were like, we're out, we can live again. But also really struggling, trying to figure out what does that mean. And then, the threat of the Delta variant came in. And I saw personally through crisis funding requests that came in, this increase in people needing to secure housing for themselves. I mean, that was like the majority of the requests that came in as we were kind of hitting that second wave was, I already did lockdown once and it was so terrible for me. I cannot do it again. I have to have a different environment to live in now. There's one, I had one member that really, it just stands out in my head. Right before COVID hit, they had been working with a lawyer towards a divorce and kind of leave their home with their children and leave the community. And then COVID hit and they got stuck in the house with their ex-husband and their children were with them as well. But it was a very abusive situation and they had no recourse. That the minute the world seemed to be opening up, it was so bad that and after being in that situation for months, they were like, I'm out, I can't even do this. And they didn't have any more bandwidth left to wait any longer and kind of see how things would shake out. And so they ended up going into a shelter and had to leave their children behind. And in this current, now reality, they're working with lawyers and through our support to just, they secured new housing so that they can show the courts that they have a stable home and they could just have visitation with their children. So the now is complicated because so much damage has been done. And sure, seemingly there are lots of jobs out there, but they're not so easy to access. And the burden is so heavy. So for members who couldn't do school before online are excited to maybe do school again in person. And for somebody who felt like, I want to take my GED and I want to just, get my high school equivalency so I can start college, they're excited at being able to like reach towards a goal that was really delayed by 1.5 to 2 years. So some of our members are just really eager to get out there. And for others, I'll let Pace, I'll speak to this a little bit more, but for others, that their mental health has suffered so detrimentally that they can't, even if there's a full-time job available, they're not ready to work in a full-time job. And finding, a part-time job is just not enough to sustain them. And with, rising prices everywhere, like it's really hard to live right now in this post, lockdown reality. So we're doing the best we can to help, we're trying to figure out what industries are suited for our members and how can we help get people the training they need to be able to access some of those industries, where again, we're trying to pivot to match the needs that are out there. And we're working towards building out a vocational scholarship program so that people can access more specific training to get into different jobs, as opposed to maybe a 4-year college track. And so we're really just trying to navigate what the world looks like now to help our members rebuild.
Yeah, it's clear that for some people, the first phase of COVID was a derailment, whereas and then as things went on, it wasn't a derailment, it was a crash. And recovering from that is all the more difficult. Can you say something more about Footsteps education program, which to me is our shining jewel? Education is such a fundamental value to me in Judaism, and for many of our members who come out of schools where they don't read and write English, where they have no math skills, no background in science, let alone any exposure to the technology and literacies of the digital world. It's one of the biggest areas that we provide for them, and you do a wonderful work overseeing that. So you tell us a little bit about the wide spectrum of degrees and programs that our members are seeking.
Sure. Like anything, I think one of our guiding, stars here at Footsteps is helping people navigate choice, right? It's just providing opportunities so that people know what's out there and then letting them choose. So it really could be anything. We offer one-on-one educational counseling and help people prep, whether it's, English just to learn English skills or to take their GED and then access if they want to go to college and where. And we have students at Princeton and Yale and Brooklyn College and BMCC and University of Michigan and University of San Diego studying medicine and law and philosophy and poetry and really anything that speaks to our members, right? Like just like anybody else, they have the full range of choice to do whatever they want. And I think something special about our program specifically is our adaptability and our focus on what our members are asking for, right? So when so much community was lost in person, services were shut down and life on campus shut down, and the ability to meet up with somebody to study and gain motivation from another member to stay in school was gone, we pivoted to online virtual study cohorts for members to kind of get together online and study. We also started a virtual study buddy program so somebody could be paired with another student who they were, of similar interests for like study accountability. We found that more than anything, our members just wanted a space to come together and like talk about the struggles of being a student. Like, what is it like to be a Footsteps member, an OTD person who's, you know, off the derech, left the religious community, and also trying to navigate a secular school system. It's hard. And even if you have student support systems through your colleges, it doesn't necessarily provide the necessary supports for that your peers who have the same kind of lived experience as you have had, like just kind of get through it. It's not just about, you know, I need extra math skills because I never learned long division, or I don't really understand, you know, the anatomy of a cell, but like, and so maybe I need a tutor to help me understand that. But more than anything, I need people to understand what I'm struggling with in the complexities of being in the secular world, trying to go to school.
So Pesach, bring us up to date. I know that the Footsteps office is at some point in the not too distant future gonna reopen. What does counseling look like these days? And what are you hearing from the people you talk to?
Yeah, Naomi, I'm so grateful that you brought up all the points that you did. It was important to hear those for everyone who's watching. In terms of the clinical work, we've talked about this in various different settings and meetings about sort of the double-edged sword version of it. Access, it was very apparent quickly that more of our members have access now. The groups filled up more. People reached out from beyond the tri-state area, different states, even different countries. Sort of magnetic field. People started coming in. So that was the beautiful part. You don't have to travel. You don't have to be here. You get to participate in this community from wherever. But something that became very apparent that a lot of us, myself, aren't very happy about is that we need other people, whether we like it or not. We are social animals, and it was very tangible that no matter what we're trying to throw at this thing, something's missing, something's off. That, you know, this leaving journey is not just an intellectual thing. It needs on the ground stuff, people, talking to people, hugging people, making friends. It's such an important part of it. We weren't able to make up for it, right? We did our best. Everyone's doing their best, but it's undeniable that something massive is missing. That was the downside of the, you know, going remote, especially for people who still are quote unquote stuck environmentally in a situation where they don't want to be anymore, whether it's where they live or where they work. In normal life, maybe it took some time to get where we need to go, but they were able to find pockets in their day and in their life where they can be themselves, where they can talk to people, where they can go places, have fun, experiment, start building their new life and figuring out who they are. But once COVID hit, that doesn't exist. All you're left with is all the other stuff. And that was really, really challenging. Something I noticed eventually, like a year in, is that people stopped caring that it's COVID. You know, they wanted that other part so badly, not wanted, needed the other part so badly that they're like, I guess, I'm gonna try to be careful, but I can't live without that part. I need other people to understand. I need to release this valve a little bit. I need to make new friends. I need to do things. All the stuff that I imagined, that I fantasized about. I got to exercise my freedom. And eventually people just stopped caring. Yeah. Today, like you said, it's not post-pandemic, but people are mostly living as, it feels a little bit like normalcy has returned. It hasn't, but people are doing things. There's a more future-oriented way of living. They're planning things. People are getting together. It doesn't feel like we're in the bottomless pit of how it felt in the beginning.
What does the aftermath look like, do you think? You know, what sort of scars what sort of scars will we be left with? And, or on the more positive side, what new kinds of resilience do you think we might come out of this with?
We're not out of it yet.
Right.
So who knows? I think that we're still trying to figure out how this impacted us, all of us. It's obvious that it did, but who?
I also, if I can add, I
Wait.
think that there was also like a little bit of an even playing field. Like there was something, a flattening effect that happened during the pandemic for our members, because, you know, one thing that's interesting about being a member is that there's so much unknown, right? You just like, you don't even know what's supposed to happen next. And there's just a lot of, like, I know Pesach mentioned it before, a lot of uncertainty and how to figure out what you're supposed to do next. When you live in such a restricted world with very minimal options, you know, it's just do what you do, because that's it, that's all there is. And when suddenly the whole world becomes available to you, it's very unknown, like what to do next. And something about COVID really kind of restricted everybody and also made it unknown to everybody what to do next. So the whole world was struggling. And our members are like looking to the outside world to be like, okay, great, we're here now. What are we supposed to do? And nobody knew what to do.
Right.
And that's really rough. And I think it's, you know, again, I think this is one of those things that where it's like, I don't know if it's split down the middle, but it just depends on your situation. So for some people, I think that the aftermath or the scars are, so to speak, in a positive way, are like a renewed determination to make the most out of it. Like I've just been stuck. My goals have been pushed off for so long. I'm now really motivated. I really want to do it. Before I was a little scared, but then I got stuck in a really bad situation longer than I wanted to be in it. I am for sure ready to go. And they're just, you know, fiery passion trying to get to where they want to be. And then for other people, right, like the scars are real and hard and can't be undone so easily, whether it's now mountains of debt or they spent the last year and a half in shelter. Like you can't take that back. And so trying to figure out, you know, whether it's dashed dreams because they started a thing that was so hard for them to do, and then they had to drop out of college and move into a shelter and their mental health is in the toilet. Like, how do you come out of that when your whole family was expecting you to fail anyway, and now you did fail, right? Like, it's really rough to undo that feeling. You know, one of the things that I don't think was mentioned here yet is the amount of negative voices that are in most of our members' head at the beginning. The whole community they know is telling them, if you leave, you will fail. And the outside world is, you know, not a safe place. And then really the outside world has not been a safe place this last year and a half. And for somebody who was brand new on their journey, just starting out right at the beginning of that, it's really hard to understand and really fathom how detrimental the last year and a half was for them, because all of their worst fears really came true. All of the voices in their head were right. And how do you undo that?
Well, those are very powerful observations. And, you know, to go back to something Pesach said at the very beginning, it reminds us that it's always a double-edged sword, that for some, the uncertainty of the life outside the community was made it a level playing field. Everybody's going through that. And for some, it was just, you know, one step too far into chaos. But I do want to hold on to those for whom it was an affirmation of resilience, because we have to be optimistic after all about the chances for success for so many of our members, because so many of them really are forging a wonderful path ahead despite all the challenges. I'm going to sneak a peek at the questions because we're now at 22. So let's see if we can talk about some of those. So the first question, which must say I was thinking about too is, we're in a time of such vaccine hesitancy, despite the fact that the vaccines are safe and proven, and so many of us have gotten it without any real effects, bad effects anyway. And you think about the controversy over masking, etc. So the ultra-Orthodox community was somewhat resistant in the beginning, although I think we're seeing a greater uptick now in vaccinations. But how did that affect our Footsteps members and their families?
I'll take a stab at it. It surprisingly didn't feel front and center, but maybe I didn't pay attention. People were sort of had their own things to worry about. Obviously, we're all aware that, certain communities were a bit more suspicious of the vaccination, and the topic of education and science came up. But people got their own stuff, their day-to-day life to get through. And it seems like this was just an added layer, right? It's like hard for me to talk to my family. Here's another thing, something like that. But something that will always stay with me, I don't know when I got cut off earlier, about the resilience, is I was also facilitating groups and doing individual therapy, and people just showed up to groups every week on Zoom and just like held each other week after week, throughout the entire pandemic, just like sitting together and like, here we are, we're sitting in this thing, but we're doing it together. And that was very palpable and very meaningful to each other. And it was really beautiful to witness that.
Here's a really specific question for you, Pesach, asking if we have peer-led groups, because there may be funding for that in the new stimulus package. So how do we feel about that?
I think we already have stuff like that, don't we? We had the Interfaithless group was peer-led by our wonderful peer connectors. So we already experimented, and so far so good. I think we're sort of trying to figure out where it goes from here, but it's certainly something that we're trying out. You have anything to say about that, Naomi?
Sure, we do. It is something that we regularly try to incorporate in our work. We have pretty much all of our cohorts include a peer-led leader. So our student study session has a member who's a co-facilitator with staff. We have regular programming also that's offered on a pretty every other week, that is open to members who are looking to lead programming for their community. So yes, it's something that we very much hold a lot of value in and look to seek to do more of.
What about the children of our members? How much contact do we have with them, particularly in a time of COVID when parents couldn't bring kids to the Footsteps office?
We have a second generation cohort that was meeting virtually, really great. And there were different kind of programming for like fun online groups for like kind of community building for them. Definitely, it's been in an area where we've, it's for sure fallen short from what it was like when it was in person. But we did try to, and as best as we can, offer online services for our second gen members. We also have, children of members that are now turning 18. As Footsteps continues to grow, we have second generation members going to school on scholarships in our scholarship program. So that's really exciting also.
Fantastic. So we've got lots of questions about COVID directly, about how we handle vaccinations, etc. But I think those are maybe more specific than we could usefully get into now. So let me welcome Lonnie back, who's going to weave some of these themes together. You know, I think it's extraordinary how, as an organization, you have managed to pivot to providing services that we didn't do, right? Like telehealth services. Not that long ago would have been unheard of. Cohort study groups for online classes would have been unheard of. Emergency funding so that our members have a place to sleep at night, and food for their families. It's really, COVID put stress on the organization, and the organization really stepped up. So deep thanks to you, Pesach, and Naomi, and to you, Lonnie, for leading the organization. Bring us home, Lonnie.
Oh, I wanted to weave a few things together. Could people hear me? Okay. I've been listening from the back end, and Pesach and Naomi, thank you for bringing to life so much. I think there's one theme that we started to hit on that I think we could go deeper on, which is parents and children and the impact of some of what the Haredi community was doing early on. This plays into the resilience and the hope side of things. So one of the amazing pieces that took off during COVID was our parenting group. And for years, we had been getting requests from parents to run groups, and we'd have them in the space and in the city or in Rockland, and like 2 to 5 people would show up. It was just like, you know, is this worth it for people? And, you know, I'm sure the parents out there of any young kids could attest to the fact that it's like hard to get anywhere, right? And so moving online really increased access for parents. And I'll speak right now that like I could do this and then I could put my kids to sleep in 15 minutes, right? So, you know, I think that we've had this amazing group led by, co-led by Javi Weisberger, Julia Hennig, and Sophia on our staff, and I think Sophie on our staff, and I think that and parents have been really finding, you know, 15 to 20 people a week, and every week on Tuesday, sometimes in the midday, sometimes in the evening, and it's been a really, what I've heard, incredible space, and I think and that group also really held each other throughout, and people are asking for us to continue our online programming as we consider what returning looks like. And so I want to say, you know, to the members out there and the supporters, like going back isn't going back to what was before, it's going back to what's new, right? Overnight, we became a national organization. Even just on this webinar tonight, we had people from all over the world. And so we know we're not going to stop doing things online, and we know there's an immense value to doing things in person, because there's a lot that gets lost without being in relationship to each other. So that's one piece. I think a silver lining of this all is learning how to do things in different ways, and increasing access for people in a lot of different ways. Another silver lining that's very odd, but I hope good, is that because the ultra-Orthodox schools were not necessarily following New York State guidelines during COVID, and they were operating illegal schools, some of what happened was that when the few emergency appeals that were getting heard in court, some of them ended up, you know, allowing our members who had been fighting for educational access around custody. Maybe they had some sort of joint custody agreement, but they didn't have any say over how their children get educated. Some of them won court cases where they were all of a sudden allowed to choose where to send their kids, because the Hasidic schools weren't abiding by New York State regulations. And while, you know, it was sad that that's what led to to the impact that it did, there are a number of families now that are able to, and parents that are able to work with their, to support their kids in having their own educational choices, and having their teenage kids choose those. And many of those teenage kids are members of our second gen groups and are leading them. And so I just want to give a shout out to those folks also, who have begun new educational journeys that they didn't think would be possible. Those are a couple of threads that I wanted to bring together. I don't know if that's bringing up other things for Naomi or Pesach, but.
I just want to thank all of our members. If the members didn't exist, we probably wouldn't be sitting here in this Zoom room. And also all of our staff, but especially the clinical team. Everything I shared today doesn't come only from me, but from conversations we've had. And I'm just wanted to mention that.
I'm happy to add to that as well. I think that the fact that we have such a devoted staff really is just a testament to how much everyone cares and wants to help and make things a little better for a struggling community. And it's not easy to work from home, although it is a privilege to be able to work from home. I feel like the staff at Footsteps didn't really miss a beat in a very trying time in shifting the office and making sure everybody was set up with tech to continue to work and serve. And it at a time where it feels like we could have been less productive, I think we were more productive. And I'm constantly inspired by my colleagues and the work that we do.
You know, one of the things that I am often asked by people who are just hearing about Footsteps is, you know, this sort of stereotype that somehow we are pulling people out of the ultra-Orthodox community. And, you know, the journey from the ultra-Orthodox community into secular life is a very, very difficult one, a highly personal choice. And everything that Footsteps does is to ease that journey, but it all begins with that personal choice. It all begins with someone deciding that that's what they want to do. And so our relationship with other Jewish organizations, you know, can be a complicated one, but it's very important for them all to understand that we are here for individual lives, whether it's a journey that requires education or mental health services or whatever it is, and to as Naomi said before, to make sure that the voices in the head of our members saying that they're going to fail and that, you know, the world is going to crush them is balanced by voices that say you can succeed, and there are specific people and services that are here to help you succeed. Lonnie, maybe you want to say a few words about some of our relationships with other Jewish organizations and how we navigate those, you know, particularly at this highly polarized time in American life, how we navigate some of those situations.
Sure, I'm not sure the exact question. I saw a couple of questions. One in particular about 2021 America or 2020 America going into 2021 America. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see all of there are a bunch of questions, but I'll focus on maybe that one. You know, our members are coming from one worldview and then enter into a world that is a lot of different worldviews. And so I think, like every community right now, we are, you know, we're working on integrating and creating spaces where we could build bridges and, you know, like stand up for what we believe our values are in terms of helping people, you know, enter mainstream society, being respectful and inclusive, and also standing up for what we believe is right in the world. And it's a very tricky time to do that. And so I can't, it's hard to go into like exact details of how we navigate it. We navigate it every day. And what we do with our staff is support our staff to support a lot of different viewpoints in a room, and hold those. And I don't know, you know, Pesach or Naomi, if you have, you know, things to add in terms of how you navigate that. But, you know, we work with our team to support our community to, you know, to be its, you know, paradoxical self, which is a community of non-joiners, which makes it not too easy. So yeah, I don't know, Pesach or Naomi, if you want to add anything in terms of 2021 America and how complex it is navigating with our members. But yeah,
Sure.
I see Naomi.
Yeah, I'm happy to add a little bit of texture there. You know, this idea that Footsteps is vilified, is that, I think that's a word. To some degree it works, right? Like some of our members are afraid to reach out initially because this idea that we have like some sort of ulterior motive and agenda. And their first phone call comes out of desperation because they don't know who else to turn to. And some of our earlier, like some of my phone calls with like a brand new member are just me reassuring them that like, I'm just here to like, what are they looking for? What do they need? What do they want? I'm here to help offer some resources if they want. The last member that I spoke to yesterday was brand new and just was like, I keep kosher. And I was like, no, she said, can you help me connect? Can you help me get some food? I really can't afford food right now, but can you get me kosher food? I said, of course, right? And help connect her to a resource for food. Looking for some mental health support. We'll help connect her to a referral for a therapist, and wanted some housing support. But it's really individual driven. Nobody's trying to do anything other than be here to support members depending on what they need. And so if that's, you know, a member who told me recently that they have been living a more religious life again and wanted to know if they're still allowed to seek support from us, I said, of course, you're welcome to call us and get whatever you need from us for as long as you want to be a member. We're here to serve. We don't have specific rules on how.
Yeah, I'll just echo everything Naomi said. I think Footsteps' mission and where I come from is not about dictating what the good life means for anyone. It's helping support them in tapping into their own freedom and agency to figure out what the good life means for them. And who knows where that goes, but that is the value over there. And I just want to mention, shifting away from this, that it's never been more clear. I feel like before COVID happened, a lot of things that may seem obvious got lost in the mix of life. But when things quieted down, it became apparent what's important for people who leave more than ever. And one of those things is mental health support. So I invite you to support Footsteps so we can have a team of 50 clinicians. I'm joking, but I'm not. But if you are a mental health professional on the outside, please reach out to us. We can use all the referrals in the world. Our clinical team is short-staffed, and we got to turn away a lot of people. So please show your love. We need more support. Yeah.
I did not plant that ask, but I was going to say thank you to people. Any networks that you imagine might be helpful to our members in the breadth of what we do, we welcome. Questions, suggestions. Do you need volunteers in this area? Do you need, professional support in Y area? Please, you can send an email to info@footstepsorg.org, and we're happy to answer those questions. I want to be sure to first say to everyone here, thank you for holding Footsteps dear in your hearts. Thank you, members who show up to help lift up your voices. And thank you to our supporters. We could not do this work without you. And it's been a huge ride, and it's not over. And Naomi thanked our team, and I'll thank our staff and our board as well. I just, every day, I feel so lucky to be able to be a part and a witness to stand alongside the community of folks forging these paths. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Pesach and Naomi. Thanks, Lonnie.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Anne.
Anne. Thanks, Di.
Thank you.